Ladies and gentlemen, Outback developers, welcome to NDC. And now, straight from the mean streets of Harvard, we proudly welcome the man, the myth, the developer, the legend, James Mickens.
All right, is the mic on? Can everybody hear me? Good? All right, excellent. So, as I was so accurately introduced, my name is James Mickens, and today I'm going to talk to you about my life as a developer. I'm going to describe to you some very deeply personal stories about how I struggle with hardware, with software, with poor internet connections. I'm in a feud with Taylor Swift right now, okay? My life is a mess. And today I'm going to open a portal into this nightmarish struggle because I think that you can relate to my suffering. So if you're like me, you wake up sometimes and you say, why did I decide to work in technology? Why didn't I study the humanities? And the obvious answer is that if you study the humanities, then modern society has said that your life is worth nothing. Right? My self-esteem is far too fragile to deal with me being a constant disappointment to everyone who surrounds me. Right? So for example, consider this guy, right? So he majored in philosophy, he's fluent in 3 languages, he has excellent communication skills, and most importantly, he loves you for who you are, okay? Even though you have flaws, because those flaws ultimately make you special and lead to personal growth, okay? So what does society say about this guy? Throw him in a dumpster. No job for this guy, okay? In contrast, let's consider this abominable snowman, okay? His resume has some pros and it has some cons. So on the pro side, he knows C++. On the con side, he will definitely eat you, right? He's going to start from the bottom up so that you'll be able to feel the pain as he consumes you. So what does society say about this guy? Hire this guy, okay? We'll put him in a special room. He can't eat anyone, or we'll just let him eat that guy in the dumpster. Nobody loved that guy anyway, right? So it's a mercy killing. Do you see what I'm saying? So literally, the current economy would prefer to give money to an abominable snowman instead of a humanities major. Every day, the Wall Street Journal has an article with a title like, "Computer scientist jobs increased by 15%, history majors routinely tortured by pirates." Okay? Nobody cares. Nobody sheds a single tear. Okay? Everything is being driven by these business wonks and these algorithm nerds, right? This is why modern music, in fact, is quite terrible. You see, back in the day, here's how you'd make an album, right? You take your band, you go to a farmhouse or an abandoned castle, you drink some tea, you read some poetry, and maybe you take some cocaine. Things happen, whatever, I'm not going to judge people. But the point is that you were inspired by your creative muse, okay? You were inspired by the brightest fires of the human spirit. In contrast, here's how a Rihanna album gets made. You just import the Rihanna module, okay? It's available on NPM. It's a Node module. You can just download it and run it yourself. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, the inputs to the Rihanna function are a set of studio musicians and a series of unoriginal chord progressions at about 128 beats per minute, because that kind of thing sounds like the stuff that you want to dance to. I don't know. It comes from your caveman part of your soul. And the output is basically 12 songs, 3 generic music videos, and a minimum concert ticket price of about $75. So this is what happens when you live in a world that overemphasizes algorithms. Now you might be thinking to yourself, James, you've stirred something up in me. You've inspired me. I'm going to go out and become a musician. Okay, I'm going to grow my hair long and wear cool leather jackets and create music that comes from the heart. And I would say that's really great for me to hear, but cut your hair. You need to eat, okay? Don't be crazy, all right? You need health care. I don't want you to get a paper cut, then you have to go die in a ditch because you can't afford to buy antibiotics, okay? So just think about this. I care about you, okay? I care about you. And some of you may come from socialized countries. Well, healthcare is free. I come from the land that has a lot of freedom, but not actually healthcare. So that's a little bit awkward. Baby steps. We're kind of getting there, basically. Paper cuts are a big problem. So anyways, this is the real reason that I work in technology. Computers are okay, but I really just need to earn enough money so that when the Mad Max world becomes a reality, I can afford to buy one of those cars that has the bendy dudes on it. because I feel like having dudes on bendy poles is going to be a key metric for success in the year 2025, once society has killed all the people who studied Romance languages. And for those of you who are actually listening, please go to my LinkedIn profile and endorse me for having dudes on bendy poles. There's no rush in that endorsement. I just need you to do this by the time the year 2025 rolls around. So thank you for your help. So anyways, speaking of Mad Max, I'm actually glad to be here in Australia. I do have to admit, though, I was a little bit afraid to come here because, from the outside, Australia is portrayed as this crazy, larger-than-life type place where danger is constantly around the corner. So, for example, I did a little research, and I discovered that in Australia, there are unmarked holes everywhere. Okay, you're walking around. What happened to Jason? Unmarked hole. We don't talk about Jason anymore. So I'm not actually sure how common these things actually are, but I think that Australians are actually very amused by Australia's reputation, and I think that they like to exaggerate the danger of Australia to outsiders. So for example, I have an Australian friend, this is true, and his name is Ryan. Now I've actually changed his name to protect his innocence. And also, I'm not going to show you Ryan's real face. Instead, I'm going to show you a photo of paranoid Hugh Jackman with a mullet. I feel like this photo really captures Ryan's attitude quite well. So I do a Google Hangout with Ryan. I say, hey, guess what, man? I'm coming to Australia. And Ryan says, that's great, but don't forget the roos control the night. And so I'm kind of shocked when I hear this. I'm like, Ryan, what is a roo? And he says, kangaroos, mate, they hang out by the petrol station so they can trample on your car. The roo cannot be contained. The roo is evil. The roo must be destroyed. By the way, welcome to Australia, right? That's what I always love about all these sort of descriptions of the country. It's like, things are really crazy, but we're so glad to have you here. So then Ryan actually continued, and he said, by the way, most of Australia is constantly on fire. Take a look at this map here. City, fire. As far as the eye can see. It's like that red eye of Jupiter, but right here on Earth. Welcome to Australia. By the way, when you put on your shoes, be sure to watch out for the shoe spiders. I said, man, what are you talking about these shoe spiders? What's a shoe spider? So my friend says, here's what you got to know about spiders in Australia. The shoe spider is the size of a car. The car spider is the size of a house. And the house spider is the size of a tiny speck of dust, so it can float inside your ear and trample on your brain. By the way, have you heard of the Sarlacc pits? So at this point, I'm thinking, Ryan, just stop telling me all this stuff. I'm going to go to Australia. I'm sure that everything's going to be fine. And I'm happy to report that I've only seen 3 Sarlacc pits since I've been here. That feels very exciting to me. I think I'm going to be okay. So anyways, one thing that amused me actually as I was talking to Ryan was that Ryan talked about Australia in the same way that MongoDB users talk about MongoDB. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, MongoDB users will tell you these insane stories about MongoDB. And you'd think that all these stories would end with MongoDB being uninstalled and destroyed from space. But somehow people continue to use MongoDB and apparently have a great time about it. Right? So this is why I think that anyone who performs DevOps for MongoDB should actually speak with an Australian accent. So, for example, instead of saying MongoDB queries don't always return all matching documents, you can say, sometimes dad shows up drunk to work, and that's just the way it has to be. Instead of saying that MongoDB can return stale versions of documents, you can say, in the outback, time is a fluid and subjective concept. Look at this didgeridoo here. Didgeridoos have no versions. Instead of saying that MongoDB can return garbage data from writes that never should have occurred, you can say, on Thursdays, MongoDB replaces every 5th bit in your database with an angry Komodo dragon. So I don't know. I guess the whole point of this rant is that life is tough. life is tough. Sometimes your databases, I guess, just have to be filled with poisonous lizards. This is the life that we've chosen as software developers. And I think it's actually tough to be a programmer. You're constantly surrounded by failure all the time. Your hardware can misbehave, your software can crash. Users are always doing unexpected things. And in the middle of this chaos, software developers are expected to constantly improve their output to produce more and more lines of bug-free code every day. And so everybody has a different theory about how to improve developer productivity. You can use pair programming, or wizard-based Scrum programming, or agile cosplay waterfall programming. You can just buy a ton of monitors so that when people visit you, they'll know that you lost your virginity in a chat room. You can use Emacs or Sublime, or you can be a real hero and use Notepad because syntax highlighting makes you weak, okay? And if your source code file doesn't fit in a note, then your modularity sucks. But everyone, I think, who's a real developer, I think everyone in this room knows there's only one true metric for how good a developer is: window placement, okay? It's the only metric that counts. Window placement evaluates how well a developer places her application windows within her desktop environment. So for example, look at this window placement here. It's amateurish, it's naive. Look at all the clumsy overlappings, the poor use of negative space. For God's sake, look at this file explorer. I don't even know what directory it's open to. This is insane. Now, let's consider the window placement of a professional developer. Now you're talking. Yeah, Papa likes it. Papa likes it. You got separate browser windows for different web searches you're performing. You've got multiple open chat sessions with both your coworkers and your personal friends. You've got a code editor, boom. You've got a terminal window yearning for your input right there. You've got the gossip site minimized, but just an Alt-tab away, so that when your boss leaves your office, you can go and see what all people are doing in Hollywood. It's very exciting. This, my friends, is the window placement of a professional developer. Now, as you'll know, when you achieve this type of window placement, you exist in a special plane of existence. It's like all of your senses are magnified and strengthened. With a single mouse click or Alt-tab, you have 67 terabytes of information at your control. Right? It's a great feeling. But after about 5 days of having optimal window placement, you'll be doing some programming, and then you'll see a little icon pop up in the lower right-hand corner of your monitor. Restart. Required for updates. Oh, God, no. No, 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 no. When you've achieved perfect window placement, rebooting your computer is equivalent to a post-nuclear apocalypse, right? Civilization is completely destroyed. There's no language. There's no music. There's no dance. It's impossible to think about rebuilding your life in such a barren world. And that's why, when you've achieved perfect window placement, rebooting must be avoided for as long as possible, right? So at first, it's very easy to do. You minimize the pop-up window, and you go about your business. But those messages from your machine become more and more urgent. If you don't reboot your machine, this small child will never be loved by his parents. And you're like, oh, well, good luck with all the sadness. Maybe you should join the army, work out some of that anger because your father never loved you. I can't help you. I've got perfect window placement. I'm better than you in a very real sense. Okay? I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Okay? This is how you feel when you have that perfect window placement, right? So the days go on, and you still haven't rebooted, and at this point, your machine starts to become unstable. Every one of your cores is running at 100% utilization. It's all kernel mode activity. Files are being opened and closed and read and written for no reason at all. All of your Bluetooth devices are on. Your machine doesn't have any Bluetooth devices. And at this point, your machine begins to become physically hot. If your machine is a laptop, it is uncomfortable to put on your lap. The fan is constantly blowing just hot air onto your lap. There is now a 97% chance that you are sterile. Your reproductive organs have been barbecued out of this plane of existence and sent to a spirit world where gonads have formed their own civilization, free from the failings of traditional human society. And this all sounds very terrible, but there is a bright side. You've got perfect window placement. Okay? So that's still pretty cool. Now, at this point, you've actually avoided rebooting for a month, and your operating system has queued up 83 critical security patches, which fix devastating security holes in your machine. But you can't install any of these patches because you refuse to reboot your machine. Day 45, without rebooting. You come back from lunch, and you discover the entire northwestern quadrant of your screen is gone. It just doesn't work anymore. It's like a migraine aura, just unfathomable pixels coming in and out of existence. And it kind of sucks, but guess what? Still got perfect window placement and 3/4 of the screen, right? You've got 2 copies of everything open anyway, so who cares if you lose a quadrant, right? And so you continue about your day. However, about an hour later, things take a turn for the worse. Now, when you look in the northwestern quadrant, it's filled with that kid who's always trying to escape from Japanese televisions and mirrors. All of your input devices at this point have now been corrupted by Satan. So whenever you try to draw anything with your mouse, you just draw pentagrams on the screen for no reason. And then when you try to Alt-tab into one of your perfectly placed windows, your machine just displays a quote from Nietzsche about staring into the void. And so finally, after 57 days without a reboot, you are forced to reboot your laptop by physically taking out its battery and then throwing it into a river. You wave goodbye to it like a lover, and you think of all the great times that you shared. Your perfect window placement is now gone, but it's not forgotten. And much like a phoenix, it will rise again. Now, of course, because you've delayed all these security updates, hackers have stolen your credit cards. You can no longer afford a phoenix. But you get the point. The metaphor is beautiful, much like your window placement used to be. Now, some of you might have noticed that the machine in this story is a Windows machine. And I'm sure that some of you are thinking, James, you'd have fewer problems if you used a Linux machine instead of a Windows machine. And my response to that is, have you ever used Linux? Linux is never the answer to the question, what life choice would reduce the number of life problems that I have right now? Right? Linux is very nice if you like editing configuration files that are poorly documented. It's also nice if you want to desperately search for device drivers for your devices. And it's also nice if you want to, in fact, write those device drivers because they either don't exist or they do exist, but you can only download them from Eastern European websites, which may be fronts for human trafficking. Linux is also very nice if you like kernel mailing lists, which frequently resemble a bar fight, or an awkward family reunion in which your uncle unleashes a profanity-filled tirade about the proper use of tab, space, and commenting formats, and everybody has to listen to this because everybody is running the operating system called Uncle X, so #uncomfortable. Linux is also nice if you'd like to use GUI managers, which are often indistinguishable from brutalist French architecture from the 1960s. Any guesses which one of these is a window manager? As it turns out, both of them are window managers. The one on the right is called GNOME Brutale, and it will be available with the upcoming Ubuntu distro, so go out there and check it out. So don't get me wrong. I actually like Linux. I have several machines that run Linux natively. But I do think that it's funny when I meet people and they say, why isn't Linux more popular on the desktop? And the answer is that the real impediment to Linux on the desktop is Linux on the desktop, right? That's the big problem, right? People who say that Linux on the desktop is right around the corner are like members of a religious cult who keep mispredicting the day that the world is going to end, right? It's like the world's totally going to end on Tuesday. And then Tuesday rolls around, and they're like, I totally misinterpreted that cave painting. The world's actually going to end next Tuesday. Then the Monday before that is when Linux on the desktop is going to become real. So it should be cool. So anyways, I digress. Where were we? Yes. So I had just been forced to reboot my machine. So I reboot my machine, and my operating system finally upgrades itself. I'm greeted with an empty, lonely desktop, and I begin the painful process of reconstructing my perfect window placement. But soon, I notice a different icon in the corner of my desktop. It says that the Adobe PDF Reader would like to update itself. Now, this notification raises a very disturbing question. Why would my PDF reader ever need to update itself? Here's what I need my PDF reader to do. Display PDF documents. That's it. Now you note that the rest of this list is blankness. It is the absence of additional list items, right? A PDF reader should be very simple because displaying a PDF document is a timeless operation which never requires an update. It should be like the plus sign, right? You would never think to yourself, what's 2 plus 2? Hold on, let me update the plus sign. I just need to download about 48 megabytes of new plus sign semantics. Okay, that's cool. The update is done, and now 2 plus 2 equals the color shamrock green. Wow, that's so amazing. It's a plus sign for the modern generation. It's not your parents' plus sign, right? This, of course, is stupid and dumb. Right? So reading a PDF file should be very simple. It should never change. So why is my PDF reader always updating? The reason, if you allow me to answer my own question, because I've thought about it, is that the Adobe PDF Reader has an infinite number of features, and new features are being added every second. Right? So is it allowable by the laws of physics for my PDF reader to add multiple digital signatures to my PDF file, and then I can add comments to the passages in the PDF file that I find interesting, and then annotate my PDF file with an embedded video, and then encrypt the entire PDF file so that after the PDF file has been automatically uploaded to the cloud, only my very best, very special friends can read it? Is this allowable by the laws of physics? Yes. Is this allowable by the laws of human decency? No. Right? So I was talking about this topic to one of my friends, and he said that all these features are there because a lot of enterprise customers use these features. But if your corporation uses all of these features, what is your business model? Okay? Are you in the business of ridiculousness? Right? Let me give you some life advice, okay? If you're protecting your mission-critical data using encrypted PDF files in the cloud, the Russians already know what you're doing, okay? They weren't fooled by that at all. Just hot knife through butter. Very hot knife, very cuttable butter, okay? So Adobe Reader sort of cracks me up because if you think about it, it represents the weaponization of complexity. Everything has to be a platform now. It has to enable this vast constellation of experiences and feelings. It's ridiculous. PDFs are supposed to be simple, right? Here's my mental model that I think is shared by a lot of people for how PDFs are created and used. Somewhere, there's a monk sitting in a castle, his face illuminated by candlelight. This monk has an idea that he wants to share with the world. He goes to his closet. He takes out a single scroll of sheepskin paper. The sheep's name was Steve. We all love Steve, even though we eventually turned his skin into paper and his hair into novelty sweaters. It was a complicated situation, but Steve understood it. He was a hero. There were no tears from Steve. Anyways, the monk takes the skin of his friend Steve, writes down his great idea. You see, the monk is employed by a consulting company that produces completely meaningless white papers about technology. 3D printers result in more 3D things being printed. Big data is bigger than you think unless you already know what the adjective big means. There will be 27 gajillion IoT devices by the time you finish reading this sentence. Basically, just take the up and to the right graph and label the axes whatever you want, and now you can write for Forrester. That's basically how that works. So anyways, this is the miracle of life, just the way that God intended. So the monk takes his sheepskin paper, he scans it, he has all the content digitized. A PDF is born into this world. That PDF is posted on a website. I download it, and I open that PDF with the ideal PDF reader. I only need 4 simple commands. Page down, page up, zoom out, and zoom in. That's all that I need for my PDF reader. So let's see what kind of tools I get from the modern Adobe Reader. Jesus Christ, look at all that. This is what Tony Stark sees when he's looking through the eyes of the Iron Man suit. Right? You're bombarded with all these colors and these icons and expanding menus. I mean, look at all this stuff I can do. I can optimize and stamp and measure and redact. I can put JavaScript in my PDF. That one's too easy even for me to make fun of, okay? I'm just going to use that as an exercise for the reader, right? But one thing that does actually seem cool is that I can put accessibility features into my PDF file so that people who are blind can read the PDF using a speech synthesizer. So that actually seems pretty neat. So I decided to click on that accessibility icon and see what happens. I'm taken to a website which tells me I have to pay money to make my PDF file accessible. That's actually kind of messed up, right? So shouldn't the ability to create accessible PDFs be part of the free Adobe software? I can just imagine Wolfgang von Adobe or whatever sitting somewhere in the executive office, counting all the money. Then an angry mob of blind people show up at his office, and they knock the desk off his lamp, and then the lamp off his desk, and he says, "Now you're playing in our world." Right? Now, to be clear, I'm not encouraging blind people to form gangs and commit vandalism. Okay? In case any of you are news reporters, don't tweet this, Snapchat it, whatever the kids do these days. I'm just saying that Adobe PDF Reader has a ton of features that most people don't need, I think. And the result is that Adobe constantly has to update itself to add new features and patch the old ones. So by the way, this is a pretty uplifting talk, huh? Just a list of things that I hate. You're lucky the organizers only gave me 30 minutes. Otherwise, I'd be up here Fidel Castro style, hour 15. T2 nano VMs are a tool of capitalist oppression. The workers deserve M3 XX largest, from each according to their ability to each according to their poorly understood workload characteristics, which may not in fact need the most expensive VM, right? San Francisco belongs to the San Franciscans of the new variety who use gentrification to push out the original San Franciscans. Anyways, what was I talking about? Ah, yes. So I was talking about things I don't like. It was very easy for me to recover my train of thought there. So what don't I like? Well, one thing I don't like is that I feel like there are too many software frameworks these days. So back in the good old days, there was just one software framework, and it was called libc. Okay? Back in the good old days, your application consisted of things you did yourself, other things you did yourself, and that was it. People were hardworking, and they knew the value of re-implementing the wheel. Okay? There was no sharing of high-level frameworks. And if you didn't like libc, then you go home, because that's how things work around here. Our little town has everything we want. We got a restaurant, we got a pond, we got a place where you can sit, and we got libc. Okay? That's all that we need. But now these developers these days, they're so newfangled. And when I hear about all this talk about this framework and that framework, I just want to cry big, angry tears, right? So whenever I go to Silicon Valley, I hang out in the coffee shops, I always hear the developers talking about frameworks. One of them says, "Hey, how's the app coming along?" And the other one says, "Oh, it's going pretty good, pretty good. We just migrated from AWS to cloud.io.io. They have 17 tens of availability. They also have data centers located in outer space, the center of the earth, and the Louvre. How exciting." So it's pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. I store all of my application data in Kitchensink, which is a non-relational, NoSQL, semi-relational JSON document table store. It supports all possible schema types natively. It only has indices if you want it to. And if it only has indices, then everything becomes an index. So it's just very fast. It's like super convenient. Then, of course, to support continuous testing and development, I set up an instance of U2Real MVP, which simultaneously executes my post-commit hooks and also sends me an inspirational quote of the day from a famous movie star or an older European gentleman who lived in the 1700s. And I also put all of my configuration data inside of Gandalf. The other person says, "Oh, I've heard of that. You mean Gandalf the Grey?" No, Gandalf the White. It's totally incompatible with Gandalf the Grey. The data format changed from XML to JSON. It's just a big mess, a big mess. Anyways, though, of course, my application needs a monitoring infrastructure to ensure that all of my code is running properly. Now, for that, I use Drunken Frenemy from high school as a service. This is actually a crowdsourcing platform that harnesses the power of all the losers that I knew from high school. These people are constantly monitoring my infrastructure and sending me irritating late-night text messages about the health of that infrastructure. They also text me and they ask whether they should stay in their current relationship, and then I say no, but then they say, "But I love her so much." Then I'm like, "Well, you should try to make it work," and they say, "But it hurts so bad." I don't know what to tell them because they've been in this place so many times, it's not healthy anymore. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, back to my infrastructure. So I collect my mobile payments using Triangle, and I collect my web payments using BillBuddy, and I detect payment fraud using Pokemon No, which allows me to look at my financial statements and see if any of them are being used by Pokemons associated with financial crime, such as Russian mob syndicate Pikachu and Kim Jong-un needs foreign currency Bulbasaur. So the developer on the right finishes the description of the application stack, and he says, "So what do you think?" Now, if this world were fair, the developer on the left would transform into some type of zombie and just devour the developer on the right. Unfortunately, we do not live in this world, so we suffer what we must. So I hear all these conversations at the coffee shop, and I grudgingly conclude that I should probably learn some more about these new technologies. So I open up my laptop, and I try to do some research on the internet. However, when I use the wireless network, the connection is just really, really bad, right? It's horrible. I'm trying to open up a tutorial on YouTube. I'm not getting 1020p. I'm not even getting 720p. I'm getting 7ps, okay? I didn't even know this was an option. I have 3.5 pixels, okay? One of them isn't even parallel to the horizon. This makes no sense. This is how a salamander perceives the world. Salamanders cannot understand tutorials on large-scale web services. I feel like I'm not getting a lot from this tutorial. So I make this sad, sad noise of defeat, and then I notice that the only person in San Francisco who is older than 35 is now leaning over my shoulder. This man turns to me, and I can tell that he's extremely wise and knowledgeable. And he says, I noticed that you were looking for something on the web. Maybe you could find the same information at a library. And I say, I'm not trying to learn about the causes for the French Revolution. I need to learn about a web protocol that was invented 5 minutes ago. Do you see what I'm saying? Right? When you take the internet away from me as a developer, I'm literally ruined as a person. Okay? It's like you've stripped away all of my fundamental dignity. Okay? I'm getting 2 kilobytes per second over this wireless connection. I tried to load my Facebook page. I got something from a CSI episode. Okay? This is terrible. Okay? So my timeline, my news feed, and my friend list have all merged into something that supports neither time, nor news, nor friends. Okay? I can't live in a world like this. Okay? So can you spare me some sympathy? Can you try to understand where I'm coming from? And the man closes his book, and he leans over, and he says, that's not really what I came here to tell you today. And then he takes off a mask, and it's a time-traveling Grace Hopper. What a convenient anecdote with which to end my talk. Time travel is real. Grace Hopper has access to it, and she's using it to deliver common sense wisdom to the confused technocratic elite. My name is James Mickens. Thank you for your time.